Holly, hello.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome, and thank you for coming back.
That's okay. Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming back because this is your second time on the podcast. But if people are listening to this episode and love your work, love what you have to say, which I know that I do, then I'll link easily to the past episode as well, where I've got a little list of what we discussed then. So we discussed in the first episode together common breakup themes that people experience, such as things like certain mental patterns they might have. So things like unhelpful thinking patterns, the fear that they've lost their kind of dream future. We spoke about mistakes that people make, for lack of a better word, during their healing process. We actually spoke about loads, whether to
Mm.
block your ex, getting closure, and how to cope if your ex moves on quickly. So I'm going to link to that. But before we dive into a few questions, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you are and where you are since the last time we recorded.
Yeah, of course. So I am Holly. I'm based just outside Manchester in the UK. And I can't even remember when it was that we did that episode, but I have a really busy full-time job as well as running Breakups and Love. And that is in the domestic abuse sector. I don't work with clients in that role. But that has taught me a lot about relationships from a different angle, obviously, in terms of toxic, harmful, abusive relationships. My role is training. So I really, although the kind of work I do through Breakups and Love is not about domestic abuse, it's, that's its own kind of subject that really has like that's a massive part of my life, my daytime job. I've been in that role for 3 years now. But my journey into actually breakups has been like a long one that's probably been around what year is it now? Probably around, I don't know, 12 years in the making of getting to this point. Which I'm happy to give you a whistle stop on that if you like.
Yeah,
Um,
go.
so yeah, so it's such a random story, and it's interesting you've asked this because um I started writing a blog the other day and I was like, oh, maybe I'll share this because I just never really talk about it. But yeah, so basically my career started in public health and I trained as a nutritionist initially. And then I went into just general public health and community type work for a long time. I was working for a community interest company. So my like kind of passion and career has always been around service based and helping people. And then separate from that, I've always liked to have a bit of a side thing going on as I still do now, obviously, in my current situation. I trained as a yoga teacher and I also trained in EFT tapping, which is now the method that I use to support people with the emotional charge of the breakup. And that was back in 2015, 16, 17 that I did those trainings. And then I continued on that career for a long time. And me and my ex at the time wanted to move away. We wanted to move abroad and we were trying to get jobs that were kind of remote where we could be anywhere in the world. We wanted to move to Spain. And my family, so my mum actually has had she not anymore, but she had a long career working on a psychic line, which is really random and a lot of people are like, oh, that's so weird. So I've always been around kind of like this, like spiritual stuff and, got into it and consider myself a spiritual person, I suppose, like very open-minded to alternative things. My auntie is also a tarot reader and she still has clients now. Um, but I kind of got into reading tarot for myself, like after a big breakup and as a way of like self-discovery, and it helped me to learn a lot about myself. And then coincidentally, at this time where we wanted to move abroad, obviously my mum doing the job that she did at the time, um, said, you could always read tarot for other people, and like open made me think, well, I'd be able to work anywhere. It's still helping people in some capacity. So she interviewed me and gave me a role doing that. And I actually read tarot for a couple of years. So it's a totally random career change from, um, I was still teaching yoga before the pandemic, still in the service space, but just more so to be remote. And it turns out I was okay at it. I used it for guidance and self-discovery rather than like future. I don't find that kind of future prediction type way, although some people do use that. I don't find that empowering. I want to help people with guidance so they can make decisions for themselves. So I was doing that for a while, and that's what opened my eyes to breakups. Um, because I just realized that that was like in a couple of thousands of readings, that was my main question. When will my ex come back? Will my ex come back? I miss my ex. Do they still think about me? Things like that. Very much like kind of in inverted commas, like psychic line type questions about you. Can you tell me something that feels quite impossible for me to know? And what I was hearing was, I'm in pain and I won't be okay until my ex comes back. And I was really like analyzing what I was hearing a lot and thinking, I want to help people with this. I want to explore this a little bit more. And I don't think for me, tarot is the way that I want to help people with this, which is when I retrained in EFT tapping and I started to deep dive into breakups and just teach myself about like the grieving process. And I studied a relationship coaching course and reflected on my own experience in relationships. I'd been through an abusive relationship myself and um, kind of was healing from that and understanding a lot about myself and my own relationship journey generally. And it just kind of all started to evolve into this like the world is kind of putting breakups in front of me in a really like highlighted way. And I stopped doing that and I got the job that I'm doing now. And then and for a few years before that, I'd started to really kind of move more into EFT to help people and using social media as that platform and sharing kind of what had helped me to get over a breakup. That's how I ended up there. And so that's where I am now. I've got this full-time job, and I run breakups and love on the side. And I don't read tarot anymore for people. I purely use the methods of self-care that I've learned through teaching yoga and looking after yourself through the other things I've done in EFT tapping and things that I've learned along the way in self-study and coaching and things like that. So it's all kind of like a random mixture of stuff thrown into the mix, really.
Wow, that's actually so fascinating. I had no idea about the tarot. It's interesting you say that though, because times that I've reached out for tarot, it's
Mm.
breakups.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a crisis point, and it's so.
yeah,
I think we all know that breakups are hard, but when you're being asked constantly about breakups, you're like, whoa, this is
yeah.
a huge problem. Like, why do we not get taught this in school? Like how to handle
Right. Oh my God.
relationships and heartbreak. Like, and then, people are ringing a psychic line or asking for tarot readings because it's this desperate attempt to unpack what's gone on,
Hmm.
why is this happening, and what can I do? And I don't know who to talk to. Do I speak to a doctor? Do I speak to a friend? Maybe my friends are bored of listening. Who do I speak to? I don't know where to turn. And then, cue people who read tarot who are there like giving people answers that they might not be able to
Yeah,
answer themselves. So yeah, it was so interesting. But yeah, it was I'd say 95% of my requests of thousands of readings that I did over that
wow.
time.
And isn't that like so telling of, I guess, how I think you said something about it. I can't remember the exact words you used, but in the like something about needing an answer to something that's like impossible to know.
Yeah.
But I think especially something like tarot or feeling like you need that kind of guidance, it
Mm.
kind of demonstrates how probably how lost people can feel in those moments, and we just need some kind of guidance.
Yeah, guidance, reassurance, comfort, and for me what I found again. This is a totally different subject, but I think what I found hard was the association and the marketing around know your future and know things that are
Yeah,
impossible to know, and
absolutely.
that expectation that you read tarot, therefore you'll be able to tell me everything about my situation without me telling you everything. And yes, there are
Yeah,
people you can do that type of reading, but I was never that type of reader. I was always pick a card and what is it telling you and how can that
yes,
help
yeah,
yourself? But and I was able to kind of weave it that way with tarot, but what I felt was this is emotional distress, it's emotional charge, it's fear, it's limiting beliefs, it's
yeah,
my ex isn't coming back, therefore I'm not okay. So can you tell me that they're coming back? And I was more reading between the lines of what people were asking me, as well as giving them that support and guidance and comfort that they needed on the spot. Um, Very much kind of analysing there's more going on here. It's not just about, it's about that, like you say, that comfort and that.
Yeah.
I
So
don't
do
know.
you find then that when most of the people that you're coming across,
Yeah,
when they're going through a breakup,
yeah,
is there is it mostly people wanting their ex back? Or is it
yeah.
people wanting to like move forward, discover themselves?
I think in the kind of earlier stages of maybe there's been a blind side or the ex has ended it. The choice was the most people I speak to, it hasn't been their choice, although a lot of people do speak to me when it has. But yeah, it's that my ex has ended it. I can't cope. The only way that I will feel better is if they come back. So I think a lot of people end up putting their ex on a pedestal and thinking that if this situation hadn't happened, I would be okay. But at the same time, the paradox to that whole situation and that I hear a lot as well is, but I know we didn't work and I know we went right together, but I still want them back. And I've been there myself. And that's so I hear both. I hear acknowledgement that no, I know it was meant to not work out. It wasn't going to work out.
Yeah,
Yet this fear that and this fear that we're not going to get back together. And
yeah,
a lot of people do say to me that they secretly hope that their ex comes back.
yeah,
That's really common. Yeah, I think there's a big fixation on, yeah, what's my ex doing? Who are they with? What if they move on quick? What if they move on with someone else? It's very what I find. It might not be the same for everyone, and it might be the type of content I put out or kind of the way I talk about things. Maybe people have mentioned it to me, and then I've really made content about that to help them, and then maybe that's attracted more. So I'm living in some kind
yeah,
of vacuum potentially. But for me, one of the main patterns I see in here is a I can't stop thinking about my ex, whether that's will they come back? Did they even care? Do they miss me? What are they doing? Who are they with? Are they happier now? Was it all my fault? Are they, it's very much ex on a pedestal. So
yeah.
yeah, there is a big fixation for me in the people I speak to on that subject.
So the difficulty almost becomes not being able to control, I guess, like their thoughts or their focus because it's completely consumed by this person.
Exactly, exactly. And it's the fear as well layered on top of that of when will I ever feel any different? Why has it been X amount of months and I still don't feel okay?
Yeah,
When will this feeling end? It's the feeling that way is so scary, and then it becomes a fear of what if I'm stuck like this forever? So it then
yeah,
amplifies all those fears, and it becomes this like catastrophic thinking of all I can do is think about my ex and I'm never going to feel any better and they're going to be happy and I'm going to be sad forever.
yeah. And I find that a lot that if I'm having these conversations with people, not necessarily that are going through a breakup that are feeling anxious, I will find that there is a theme that you've already mentioned, which is I won't be able to cope,
Mm,
or if this happens, I won't be able to cope. If they do that, I won't be able to cope. Even
mm,
though you might be coping with something that you once thought you wouldn't be able to cope with. So there's that real fear of like, yeah, your capacity to deal with something.
mm,
And I also find that people will get really stuck on certain like images of themselves. So, for example, if it happened quite recently, I said, "Well, what is it that you see?" And it was that I'm on my own and I'm really lonely, or that I'm desperate and I'm so sad and very vulnerable. And so
mm,
people see these versions of themselves, which
mm.
I would say we very rarely become
Yeah,
because we do cope better than we give ourselves credit for. We have more people and more love around us quite often, or we are capable of creating more of it.
yeah.
Um, but there is, yeah, we're like drowning in the fear of it.
Yeah, 100% hear you on that. And it's like defining yourself because of the situation or the feeling that you're getting right now, which is, rejection or loneliness, and then thinking you're seeing yourself through that lens and that filter of well, that's me. Like that's because I'm not good enough, or I'll always be like this forever. And yeah, it as you were saying it then, it's just like I can feel the pain of that feeling. It's
That's it,
really
isn't it?
so real, isn't it, for people? And it's really scary and
It's so
um
scary. And
yeah.
those like real early stages,
Mm,
I, the doctors that I have gone to so many times in like the last year, because obviously I was pregnant and had my baby. So I'm doing this walk to my doctors, and I have to go past this certain field, which is near where I used to live with my ex-partner. And I
mm,
will never forget that I walked through this exact field the day after we broke up. And I was like, I don't even know how to describe it. I was numb. I was just walking and just lost. And you can imagine kind of the state I was in.
mm,
And now when I walk through it, it is the wildest thing, especially when I walk through now with my baby. And I'm
mm.
like, I can't even fathom that that was because one of my biggest fears then was like,
Yeah,
what if I never meet someone?
yeah,
What if I'm alone forever?
yeah,
So to have this situation, but even now, and I am reminded of that, and it's nice to have those moments of
yeah,
realizing, how far you've come. Um, but I still remember it. I remember how hard it was to put one foot in front of the other, how hard it was to breathe, whatever.
yeah.
Um,
I love
so with
that.
that, because if anyone's going through that, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to like trigger you anymore. Um, with that, for people in that moment where when you're out of it, it's wonderful again and you can see clearly again.
Mm,
But if anyone's listening to this and they are there and they are going through that, whether it's because of a recent breakup or because you're still there because you're feeling stuck there at the moment,
mm.
what would you say to them?
I'd say self-compassion first of all, straight away, because there is a breakup is so significant, and it doesn't matter how long it's been. It doesn't matter that you feel the way you feel. You've got to meet yourself where you are with compassion straight away, because no amount of you giving yourself grief or, well, I still feel like this now and it's been a week, a month, 2 months is going to help. And it's 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 a massive thing to go through. And I think normalizing the pain in a way of just getting perspective, like actually not again, not to trigger, but just get some perspective on, of course this is hard. Like, of course it's going to be hard. Heartbreak isn't easy. And I think something I hear a lot which relates to this question is like an almost confusion of, why does it hurt so much? Why do I feel like this? Why am I so sad? And don't question how you feel. You feel this way because it's a breakup and it's hard. And if you can just realize that you're not just dealing with like the grieving of a person out of your life, it's your routines in a practical sense, it's your social circles, your family dynamic, and how embedded you are in that. It's the person you text, the meme that you see on Instagram. It's you've lost potentially somebody that you share your deepest secrets with, or you were going through something in your life. There's so much going on, and you can't underestimate that. So if you're feeling like that and you're just confused as to why or when it's going to end, it's like, just take a step back, breathe, and give yourself some compassion and love and grace, because it's not easy. And then kind of make it your mission to firstly like keep that compassion throughout, because it will be up and down, and there will be bad times that feel so bad, and then the next day you might feel okay, and it's like a roller coaster. So to expect it to be hard and then get easier and then hard again and easier until it slowly like settles, but to find your own methods and ways of to soothe yourself through it, not to resist the things you're feeling, like not to push sadness away, just to soothe yourself with compassion through those really hard moments. So for some people it might be, well, I know that having a bath, where when I'm stressed I get in the shower. Like I didn't realize I did it until probably the last year. Like sometimes if I'm say working from home and I've had a stressful morning, I find myself having a shower on my lunch, and I'm like, why? I don't know why felt the need for a shower, but I know when I observed it, I thought, well, the water just soothes me a little bit. I don't know. I like being in the water, and I'll have a bath at night if I'm stressed. So it might just be as simple as a shower. It might be just getting a breather outside for some air. It's just being very practical. So expecting the emotion, but applying whatever you can practically to just give yourself some relief in those moments, or to just again, not about resisting what you feel, just holding yourself with love through it instead. Because I think what can happen is in those overwhelming like numbness, it feels so all consuming that you kind of judge yourself harshly, or I'm so stupid, I'm never going to meet anyone, like look at me, I'm so sad, I'm hopeless. This really like negative critical self-talk that can come in. Whereas if you just go, okay, of course it's hard, okay, what can I do for me now, like this is hard, it's okay, and be very reassuring to yourself, then that I think helps to reduce the stress that that moment brings, and that's what's going to get you through, and just doing that over time. And sounds a bit too simplistic for a mammoth feeling, but actually it's those tiny moments of holding yourself that really make a massive difference and make those moments less intense.
I think it's actually a really important point to make because have you heard of like the two arrows?
No.
Two arrows I might have heard. I think originally, I think I've heard it renamed as the two arrows. I think originally it's the two darts. And it's
Yeah.
this idea, and you can apply it to any life situation,
Mm,
daily annoyance or something, big like a breakup. But the first dart is the life experience or the situation. And that could be that I spill this water, or
yeah.
it could be a breakup. So that's the first thing. It's the first kind of pain, if you like.
Yeah.
And the second dart is the continued suffering that we actually create ourselves ultimately
Yeah.
through beating ourselves up about it and criticizing ourselves and telling
Yeah.
ourselves what we should have done and we
Yeah.
should be or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're already going through this huge thing, which, you're going to know is likened to like physical pain. We're
Mm,
going through one of what I truly think is one of the most difficult things we go through in our lives is a breakup.
yeah.
I thought it was so funny earlier when you said about, why aren't we taught this in school? And it's so true because we
Yeah.
all go through this big painful thing, or most of us. And then, yeah, and then there's this other suffering, which is almost worse. Like, how can you heal? How can you be with the pain that
Mm,
needs to have your support when you're too busy beating yourself up?
yeah.
And people will say to you, right, how do I move on? Well, you're so busy beating yourself up, you're not even being with the pain. How can you be?
Yeah.
You
It,
know?
exactly. And we don't like discomfort, so we'll do anything to push it away, including giving yourself a grief and giving yourself a hard time. And it's a kind of like natural reaction we have to pain, to think that something is wrong. Well, yeah, like, you're going through a hard situation, get perspective on that. It's of course it's hard. A lot of people what I find interesting is I get a lot of comments around my ex just doesn't seem to care, or they've moved on quick. How can they not even be sad? And in the next sentence, why am I so sad? It's like, so you understand why someone ought to be sad about a breakup, yet you're giving yourself a hard time because you're sad, yet you're confused why your ex doesn't appear sad. So
Yeah.
you know logically that sadness is inevitable or normal or natural in a breakup. Yet because you're sad, you're being really harsh with yourself, and you're not applying the same logic to you. So it's that kind of like normalizing your own experience, so that, yeah, like you said, you can avoid that second dart
Yeah.
of layering on the suffering. In fact, there was a study recently, and it was an EFT practitioner that shared it in one of her newsletters. And it was it'd been, I think it was last year, 24 or maybe 2023. And it was a study of the proof and evidence that self-compassion reduces the intensity of stress and struggle in a
Yeah.
challenging situation. And I think an issue, not an issue as such, but I think because of like social media and online and so much conversation around words like self-love, self-compassion, self-care, there's almost been a dilution of it, or you hear, oh, be self-compassionate, or oh, self-love. And I think people, myself included, sometimes you can almost zone out and go, oh, yeah, I know I need to love myself more. Oh, I know I need to be self-compassion. And that's why I like to really talk about the practicalities of what does that actually mean. It's all very well hearing a word and then not really knowing how to apply it to your own life in that situation. But it's like, well, what self-compassion means in a breakup is exactly what you've said. Just be very aware that this is hard and you deserve grace with yourself.
Yeah.
And if you can just sit and say, as you would to somebody you really care about, it's going to be okay. You're okay. You're having a feeling right now and you're doing your best and you're going to figure this out and just breathe and
Mm,
you're going to get through this. Versus, oh, you're so stupid. I can't believe this. Why are you so sad? How could you have
yeah.
messed up? It's being very aware of that, and that massively helps. And it is a practice. I think again, another thing is if you don't get it right straight away, it's a chaotic, messy time. So then trying to embed all these really like loving practices towards yourself when you might not
Yeah.
do it is also another pressure. So again, have self-compassion for yourself in that way as well. You're not going to get it right
Yeah.
straight away. You are going to still feel messy. You are probably going to not be very nice to yourself. But the more you can just tune in and be like, okay, look, yeah, okay, I've had 5 minutes of it now. I'm stopping that now. I'm gonna go and do something really nice for me. Just gonna make myself a brew, have a breather, ring a friend that I can really trust.
Yeah.
Like and I'll be okay.
So really noticing when you're falling into that and like
Yeah.
limiting it, isn't it?
Yeah, as much as you can in with that situation.
And I think it's really worth noting that, you're hard on yourself from this time. You are going through something really significant.
Mm.
You are probably like trying to make sense of things that don't even make sense. And something I think that it like keeps kind of coming up for me that I think you've kind of referred to a couple of times is this idea of how messy and chaotic it can be.
Mm.
And like a roller coaster. And I think you were saying, one day you might feel something and the next day you feel another. I mean,
Yeah.
we can probably say that you can feel a million things in
Yeah.
1 minute when it comes to a breakup, you
Yeah.
know? So, how do you, firstly, can you just talk to that? Because I think that's really important to normalize as well, because you can feel like you're going crazy.
Yeah.
That 1 minute you're literally depressed, then you're really angry, then
Yeah.
you might even feel like, okay, you know what, this is going to be great, but then you wake up missing them again.
Yeah. Exactly. You can go from feeling like totally empowered, waking up like, this day is gonna be amazing and my life's gonna be amazing and I can do it and I'm so proud of myself, to literally within 5 minutes of thinking that, being in a heap on the floor, ringing up sick to work because you can't cope with the day. And I think just to expect that the waves they're gonna feel intense at times. They're gonna be ups and downs. And if you stay connected to yourself. And by that, what I mean is like just kind of have a blanket approach of, this is going to be a wild ride, a tough time. What can I do to, generally just create peace for myself right now? So things like, you know, canceling a few extra plans, or knowing, okay, if your social calendar is very chaotic and you get quite extra stressed, just kind of easing off, controlling the controllables a little bit, like kind of almost planning to feel a bit all over the place. Or if you want to make plans with people that will be okay and understanding if you cancel it 10 minutes
Yeah.
before, and being very kind of like general, almost like not breakup first aid, but general assessment of the situation. Like, this is going to be tough, so what can I do to relieve some of those extra pressures right now? Because even if I'm feeling good today, in 2 weeks' time, I might not be. So, does that thing that I've planned actually help me right now? So,
Mm,
be quite connected to yourself in that way, really knowing that you need your extra TLC from
yeah.
yourself for the foreseeable until you start to feel into that grounded space. Because I think at first, when you first go into a breakup and you're dealing with everything, you just kind of have this pressure and this expectation that you need to feel better overnight. And I think actually it's like you're not going to. You're going to feel great. And I have people say to me, I felt so good. And then now I've had a month of feeling really bad. And it's like, it's okay. That's what happens. So if you can kind of almost not to kind of be pessimistic and think it's always going to be hard and that's it. It's like, no, it will. It just will. If you're sad about this now and you feel okay tomorrow, it is going to be hard. That being said, you'll be pleasantly surprised then if you find it easier
Yeah.
than you expected. Um, so
So when someone's in that place of like, I was feeling good and now I'm not, and
yeah,
that I guess like yeah, understanding that that's really normal.
yeah.
Do you think is that enough? Is that kind of conversation you would have with them? It's like, yeah, like that's normal.
It's normal. And also pay attention to what's coming up because I think it was my mum that said this to me a long time ago, and I've never forgotten it actually. And I think it's a great piece of advice. It's like, okay, well, space, you've dealt with one layer now. You've dealt with like, I don't know, the rejection or whatever happened, how the breakup happened. You've processed the emotion around that. The next thing is coming to the surface now because before you didn't have capacity you were so busy thinking about the way he ended it that you weren't going to just reflect on this. It's like, you just expect more is going to come to the surface. And I think over time, what happens is people feel okay because they've got their head around one piece.
Yeah,
And the next thing comes up and they feel sad again and they don't understand. It's like, well, maybe now time is passing where you're just having realizations about the relationship and getting some anger about something you weren't really angry about a month ago because you're looking back and going, hang
yeah,
on a minute, I tolerated XYZ or why did I say that thing in that situation? I could have saved it. It's almost like the next thing then becomes revealed. And it's not because you've taken a step back. It's because even after 6 months, you're still going to have realizations. So
yeah,
pay attention to what's coming up and take the wisdom from it. So I think it all depends on the situation. If somebody's having a really emotionally intense time and is back in the rawness and the thickness of the emotion, it's again using those self-soothing techniques, which is why I like EFT tapping. But also if it's more of a reflective I feel like I've taken a step back because now I'm blaming myself for a conversation we had 2 years ago. And if I would have
yeah,
done X, Y, Z. So it's like, okay, well, what can you learn from it? Be practical. You can't change what's happened now. What wisdom can you take from that experience that is going to help you in your next experience? Because you can always look at something and grow through it in a way. And I think as you go along in your process and you're starting to feel more grounded, yes, you might have steps back, but you're in more of a position where you can go, well, I know what I'm upset about now. I'm upset about X, Y, Z. So it's like, okay, what's that telling you? Listen to what your emotions and your feelings about that are telling you in a way of growth and taking that piece of that nugget of wisdom so that in the future you can be like, right, I've had a relationship experience in the past where I acted like this in this situation. And I don't think that helped me and I don't quite like it. That's accountability. Okay, I can learn from it. I can really practice that differently now. That's quite an empowering thing to do as well. So it all depends on the context, but that's what I believe happens is that kind of different things coming up to the surface, different levels of emotion, different um because you're kind of dealing with one bit at a time. You might have a week of missing their family, then the next week you feel fine,
yeah.
and then the following week you're upset because it's their birthday, and now you've got all these
Hmm.
memories about when you're on holiday. So it's a completely different thing, but it's all part of the process. I say to people a lot, a breakup is a process.
Yeah,
It's not going to be all tied up in a neat ribbon one day and that's it, you're done. You
yeah,
might think you are, and then something pops up naturally because of a reminder, for instance.
that's it. And there's reminders everywhere,
Hmm. Like
you
you said about
know.
the field, walking,
Yeah.
you're not aiming to eliminate things from your mind. You're aiming to be able to think about them or let them cross your mind or walk through the field, yet not have that same emotional reaction that you would have done back then. So because again, people say, I can't stop thinking about my ex. Will I ever stop thinking? I've even been asked, do you think about your ex?
Mm,
Like, well, I run breakups and love. Naturally, I reflect on my ex a lot
yeah,
because that's kind of, I'm referring to my experience. But I think about him in a very like, it's just what happened. Whereas
yeah,
2 years ago, it was. Oh, I'm choked up because I'm thinking about him and I
Yeah,
can't speak. It's you're not aiming to eliminate memories. You're aiming to be able to have them run through your mind and not feel the same intensity. So again, not expecting that either. Not expecting that
exactly.
Rex will just not ever come into your mind again because they will.
Yeah.
They will
And
come into.
also being able to reflect on it, like these are still, moments and parts of your life. But I
Yeah.
think that you make a really good point, which, because I've had it where people have said, "Oh, I think about my ex. Do you think that means that I'm not interested in my new partner?" It's like, no, I
Yeah.
think maybe your ex just crossed your mind,
Yeah.
you know? And but I think it's the meaning that we attach to
Yeah.
it. But probably there's a wider thing. I mean, this is just me thinking out loud, but I imagine there's a wider thing going on there. And if you're attaching to your ex in that way or making it mean something, you probably have that pattern with thinking anyway. I would expect you attach a lot of meaning to your thoughts and
Yeah.
overthink and don't kind of know how to get that balance for yourself, you
Exactly.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's about, yeah, navigating. Well, yeah, definitely the meaning, as you say, because just because you think about your ex doesn't mean you're supposed to be together or they're your soulmate or they're the one.
Exactly.
And a lot of
Sometimes we're
the
just in a habit of thinking about them as well.
exactly. And yeah, exactly.
Because I do think, especially with, there's a certain point where people are like, but I think about X as soon as I wake up. Like, yeah,
Mm,
but by now it's also a habit that you're in the habit of it's the first thing you think about when you wake up,
yeah, and you've
you
almost got
know?
to like put a bit of effort into break that habit. Okay, if you know
Isn't
you're going
it?
to wake up and think of them and then potentially scroll through messages and on the social media, what can you do different in your morning?
Yeah.
Just break that and make it a thing of the past.
Yeah, that
You want to
takes
get another habit that you're not quite fond of.
exactly.
Yeah.
As a closing question,
Hmm.
I would love to ask, do you have any non-negotiables for people that you recommend? I know very, we're both very in agreement around the self-compassion,
Yeah.
and also around letting people find what works for them. So I
Yeah.
guess non-negotiables might be a bit strong, but
Yeah.
just for a bit of fun, if you had to give like your non-negotiables that in your experience help people through a breakup, what would
Yeah.
they be?
Oh, that's an interesting one because yeah, one of my non-negotiables is you know yourself better than anyone. So
Yeah.
no, but I think you want something a bit more juicy in terms of non-negotiable. I'd say a non-negotiable. If you one thing around no contact comes up, so I will say this as one. If you are in contact and you don't need to be, and it is feasible for you to not be in contact, just be honest with yourself and don't be in contact. It'll be the best thing that you can do. Eliminate somebody from your mind, your not your mind, your energy, your space, whether that's on social media, text, camera roll, things in your room that's still there because you've not got rid of them. Any evidence of your ex that you can get rid of, if you can. So, for instance, you're not tied through children, or you're not married, or you don't still live together. Just rip the plaster off and do it because you'll feel so empowered. And also another thing is there's got to be a point where, and I saw somebody write about this the other day and I loved the way she put it and I can't remember the words, but I really advocate for making a decision. Yeah, because I think it gets to a point where you know you need to accept it, but you just don't want to. So you're at because this whole grieving process, and a lot of people say, well, when will I get to acceptance? And it's like, you might be acceptance for a long time, but you might just not be letting yourself because you know that that's it now. I need to move on, and moving on is scary. It's a rebuild of your life. It's the next step. So it doesn't mean it magically feels better. I think make a decision. You're going to get to a point where you're like, you know, deep down it's over. Make a decision that you get to have a lovely life from this point. And yes, you might not know how, and you might not have all the answers, and it might not happen overnight. It just won't happen overnight. But give yourself permission. There's got to be that point where you realize it's you that's keeping yourself stuck. And that does sound quite harsh. And I'm not saying early stages, but I just mean, I think within us, we all know, I know it's over. I know I have to move
Yeah.
on. I just don't want to. And yes, it's scary, but you can make that decision and then you can be like, right, I've made the decision, what do I do next? And that's when you can deal
Yeah.
with everything else. But I think a lot of people maybe, again, it could be habit where they've never thought about it in that way of, oh,
Mm,
I get to give myself permission to let go and move on. Okay.
yeah.
And then it gets to be exciting and you can stand in your power and realize you've got a lot more control over your situation than you might be realizing you are. And sometimes it is you standing in your own way.
Yeah.
So again, I'm all for like first and foremost self-compassion, doing it in
Yeah.
your way, not rushing yourself. But those are the more kind of different or maybe
Yeah, but
yeah.
interesting. I would definitely still class that as self-compassion. I
Mm,
think Kristin Neff, I can't remember her exact words, like, she's the absolute uh what do you call it, self-compassion queen.
right.
I can't remember what she calls the self-love, where it's like the soft, the
Mm,
super kindness to yourself, but then she has the fierce self-love. And the
mm,
fierce self-love perhaps is a bit more of that.
yeah.
Like it's still very self-compassionate, you're still understanding and no judgment.
Yeah.
However,
Come on
um,
now.
it's time for us to move on,
Yeah, do
but we
you know
can
what?
do that with love.
100%. And I think this links to, I think I shared this when I did was in your workshop. That is exactly how I see like relentless and gentle. When I
Yeah,
reflect on mine, I'm like, it was relentless at the same time gentle. So,
yeah,
Holly,
exactly.
come on now, Holly. You've got to do this differently. There's got to be that fierceness. There's got to be that drive for you to realize you get to have a great life and you have to play a part in that and you have to get into your life. You need to get out of your ex's life. You need to, as in off their social media, wondering what they're doing, being fixated on them. Make your life about you. And yes, be that fierce energy that you need and write it on a post-it and do all the things and give yourself that nudge. At the same time, full gentleness. So it's a mixture of that. I'm making a decision here and I'm not taking no for an answer because I deserve it. At the same time, being like, but I'm really sad and I need all the love.
Yeah,
It is that fine balance, but that fierceness definitely helps. And you'd be surprised how just saying, you know what, I don't care what they're doing anymore. Even if you don't quite believe it, just
yeah,
declaring that to yourself, which is what I did. At the time of my last breakup, I got to a point I was like, you know what, I just don't care. And I heard myself say the words, I was like, oh, that feels really good. And then I
yeah,
believed it then and I just didn't. And it's not because I was
yeah,
hating him, it was like, no, my life's more important now. So it's that just come on, that like tough love with yourself a little bit.
yeah. What a perfect way to end the episode. Thank you so much. I
That's
really
okay.
appreciate
It's
you
been
coming back
amazing.
here. Obviously, you've done two incredible workshops for us inside the Attachment Recovery Gym. So, I just really appreciate all of the work that you're doing and particularly the support you've given the people in this community as well.
Yes, thank you so
Where
much
can,
for
obviously,
having
I'm
me.
going to link to you, but where can people find you?
Breakupsandlove.com, breakupsandlove __ on Instagram.
Thank you so much.
All right, no worries. Thank you.